late, sorry. Great, I call this meeting to order. This is the March meeting of the Human Rights Advisory Commission, City of Beaverton, March 3rd, 2022, right? 2nd, 2022. The meeting will come to order. Welcome everyone. It's great to see everyone. And isn't it great? We might actually, softly saying this, get closer to Earth that was, you know, in a little bit. And wouldn't that be great?
I agree.
Our first order of business is the minutes approval. I pass you to Sabdy.
Hi everyone, happy Wednesday. Okay, so jumping in, want to make sure first, did everyone receive the minutes? Any issues getting minutes? Everyone got them? Okay. Are there any additions or corrections? None? No one has anything?
Oh, I
Okay.
have a tiny correction, Sabdy.
Oh, yes.
I shared it with Paolo, but I didn't see new minutes published. So my name was just not fully written out in the record. So I just want to make sure my full name is present. My first last name was abbreviated. So that's all.
So
I
we
wrote it
can't
out.
have that.
I wrote it out, and once approved, what I send to go on our website will have your updated full name.
Thank you so much.
Of course.
Okay, good to go aside from that. Okie dokie. All right, if no corrections, then minutes and approve as corrected.
Fabulous. Paolo.
Cool. So we do have one person waiting in public participation. If you all saw my email that I sent out again yesterday, it's a reminder that Dan Turk with the Community Development Department is going to be joining during public participation to talk about some work happening in Milliken Way. So Dan, if you were there, I just pressed the allow to talk button.
Yes, I'm here, Paolo.
Hey, Dan.
Hi, guys. I can't see myself, so I'm assuming I'm okay, right? Can you guys see me?
Yeah, and I'll go ahead and just promote you to panelists so that you could go ahead and turn on your screen if you'd like.
Sure. Yeah, no, I'm happy to. Yeah, it's only fair.
Totally.
Okay. Hi, guys. So thank you, Paolo. Is this a good time for me to go to give my spiel?
Yes, please.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, guys. My name is Dan Turk. I work with the Community Development Department in Transportation Planning, and I'm the project manager of a couple of capital projects downtown. One of the projects is the Downtown Loop, which is looking at improving the pedestrian and bicycle facilities on Hall and Watson. That's in the planning process now. We're trying to figure out what vision to move forward with. And another project that I'm managing is the Milliken Way Extension Project. Milliken Way is the road that goes right down by City Hall. It's parallel to Canyon, a block north. And the city has money from the county to extend Milliken Way all the way to Lombard. Right now, it doesn't go through to Lombard by the transit center. So it's about a 3-block area, but the project is much more important and complicated than that. And we're going to be launching the planning process for it, where we're going to be deciding what alignment to use, what cross section to use in terms of the types of sidewalks, type of bike facilities, whether or not to convert some of those intersections into signals. The ultimate goal is really to build that for not the land use it is right now. It's a lot of auto dealerships or one big one there, but the land use that we envision having there as the downtown redevelops, as the downtown becomes more of a people-oriented downtown. And as part of the planning, it's very important for us to get public participation. We want to be able to get input from people from things like all the way from existing conditions to the design alternatives and then an implementation plan. And one of the key ways that we do that is we have a community advisory commission. It's a 15 to 20 member ad hoc committee. where we meet maybe 6 times during the 18-month period. The meetings are 2 hours long. And basically we present, for example, we'll present the alternatives that we've come up with and get feedback from people. And we're reaching out to get a diversity of voices on there. We really want, you don't necessarily need to be someone that lives or works near Beaverton, although we definitely need people like that. But we're looking for somebody that's a resident of Beaverton, that's interested in participating with the city, can work well with others, and can give us some good opinions about how we should improve this street infrastructure for people, or how we should take care of the property owners that are there. There's a possibility for that we might need to have some right of way. There's a possibility that there may be some some people may need to be relocated depending on what we choose, and those are very important issues that we as a city need to deal with. So it's a little project, but it plans on being very interesting. And we'd love to have people apply for our community advisory committee. The other thing I'd like to say is if you're at all interested in the downtown, this is the type of project that we'd like to replicate throughout the downtown. In other words, really changing a streetscape from what it is right now. There's barely sidewalks, there's huge rocks, there's a bike facility, but it just doesn't look like a place where people would really be walking around. And converting that into something where it's a pleasant space outdoors would lend itself to sort of promoting more active land use. And this is really a good test case for us, and hopefully something that we'd replicate for the rest of the downtown. So I think Paolo sent you all the information and the link to our website. If at all interested, please give me a call, or the application is on the website. And if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them now, if it would help you make a decision.
I don't have a problem if he wants to ask questions. I know we usually don't. But
Oh, you
we're a
don't?
little-
Okay, that's fine, Joy. Yeah, just Paolo has.
Well, we have a light agenda tonight, so if people have questions, I think we can accommodate that.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you. Yeah, no, whatever the protocol is. And Paolo has passed on to you my information, so anybody can call me with any questions, or, look at our website. And, I thank you for the opportunity to talk to you.
Yeah, Spencer has a question.
Hi, thanks. My question is, and I may have missed it, do you have any plans to do any improvements out towards Murray?
On Milliken?
In other words, east of Hall and Watson and stuff.
Yeah, on Milliken, no. The physical scope of this project is from Watson to Lombard on Milliken, so it's a 2 or 3 block area.
Got it.
Yeah, but it would definitely have to complement, what Milliken has coming into there. Yeah.
Great. Thanks.
Well, I see Molly's hand.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for coming to speak to us, Dan. I appreciate it. My question is, I see that the applications to serve on the CAC committee, they meet until October of 2023. Is that the intended hope that there will be a plan in place that would be already be implemented by that time, or is this something that's already started?
Yeah, as much as I'd like to move quicker, no. What we would have then is we would have a plan which would outline what we'd like to do. And when I mean we, it's not just a technical team, but the community would like to do with respect to that project, and then have it adopted by the city council. And then after that, we would move into designing it and building it. So it's a long process, but the reason is that we're getting input from people all along the way, and we want to make sure that it's the right solution, and we're also implementing it well, because one of the challenges from an equity point of view is, we're improving the downtown, that could cause some displacement. And then also just the way that we construct things in terms of the properties that we affect also has some some potential impacts and people that live there or also businesses. So there's a big element here of, you know, what we want to do is not what the city has done sometimes in the past. And I'm not criticizing anybody. I mean, we're a growing city. Sometimes for these capital projects, we just kind of come up with a technical solution and we just build it, right? And what we're trying to do is really come up with a solution that the city, that the community can support, and then implement it in a very thoughtful and caring way for the people that are going to be affected, you know, that live or work there, because this will be a big benefit for the city as a parallel route for Canyon, for bikes, for redevelopment. But, you know, these people that are living there right now could be affected, and we want to make sure that we're treating them fairly.
Thank you.
That's great. All the voices. Anyone else? It sounds complicated and interesting. I really appreciate you bringing it here.
Yeah, just give it a thought. And you know, we're likely to be, you know, the city has a new stipend policy for people that are nice enough to work with us on things like this. So, you know, in the application, there's a question about if that would make a difference, you know, in terms of being paid for your time a little bit. You know, we feel that's fair because, you know, it's a good amount of time, and also just, you know, reviewing materials. So just thought I'd mention that as well.
Dan, did you mention a deadline to apply already? Sorry if I missed that.
Well, if I did, it's probably changed. So we've had, you know, we're trying to have a 15 person panel. We have seven or eight applications so far. Basically this week or next week, really, if you'd like to apply. And of course, you know, it's, if you apply, it's not you don't have to do it 100%. It's more for, you know, for us to consider and get the right mix of people. But yeah, if this week or early next week, you could apply for, and feel free to pass it on, you know, pass the information on to other people. You know, really the only requirement is living in Beaverton. And, you know, someone that is interested in working with others and helping us out here at the city. It's very important to us to really work with the community. You know, it's a priority of the mayor, I know, and the city council. You know, this isn't just about making technical decisions. It's really about, you know, coming together and figuring out what we want as a community for the downtown and how a project can support it.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you so much for your time, guys, and thank you for your work on this committee. I'd like to learn a little bit more about it, and I'm sure you guys are doing interesting and very noteworthy stuff as well.
Thanks for joining us. You're welcome anytime.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, guys. Bye.
See you again.
Thank you.
Should I just keep going, Joy?
Go ahead.
Okay, cool. So we'll transition over to liaison updates. Let's hear from AJ since you're joining us. Welcome back.
Thank you. I'll introduce myself to the new members of the team. I'm Alan Jolfs. I've been with the BPD for 20 years, a little over 20 years, and I'm currently a captain in our administrative bureau. So I supervise our records division, our community resources division, and our admin teams, payroll, and folks like that. I don't have a lot for the team. Obviously, I kind of coming in cold when the chief called me. So we're busy working through the budget season, as Councilor Hartmeier-Prigg is probably well aware. We submitted our budget for internal review, and we're doing some internal review stuff that's coming up next week, actually the next couple of weeks. So hot and heavy on that. We've got hopefully 6 brand new police officers starting at the end of March 28th. I think we're still waiting on one to complete all the necessary psych and medical things that have to be done, but it'll be a 6 that's a good size class for us. Usually we average probably 3 to 4. So a group of 6 is a big group, which will get us very close to being full staffed. But we just had one of our senior guys retire yesterday. So already we're down a body again. So it's kind of a constant constant battle to stay right at full staff. Other than that, trying to think of what else is going on. This time of year, we typically, we've been doing our in-service training teams for all of our officers. So I went through last week. It was a 10-hour day worth of training. And then we'll do it again at the end of March, and we'll do it again in June, and then we'll do it again in September. So because of COVID, we've had a hard time getting all of our training hours in that are necessary, just because of distancing and not being able to all be in the same room together. So needless to say, much like everyone else, we're very, very ready to be done with COVID restrictions at the PD. I get to wear a mask in my office for the last 2 years, and so I'm kind of over that and ready to move on. So anyway, with that, open it up to questions. If anybody has anything for me.
Hi, Alan, is it?
Yes, it's Alan. Sorry. It says Chief Groshong on there.
You're right. I wanted to say hi to you, and I was like, he's not Ronda.
Yeah.
But nice to meet you, and thank you for joining. I do have a question just as it relates to Beaverton PD and just returning to work. And
Okay.
just, there's obviously a lot of people that's going to be back out again come, I think, April or May. Are there any concerns from like a staffing perspective, or is there like a plan in place to kind of, I guess, account for more people being out and about? I don't know if that's a concern for Beaverton as a whole, but just kind of curious on just, there'll be more foot traffic, there'll obviously be more cars on the road. Just something to think about for this team, if there's any sort of concerns or plans needed.
I don't necessarily think so. I think for the most part, probably for the last conservatively 8 months to a year, businesses have kind of reset themselves into whatever the new normal is going to be. And so folks that are working from home, more likely than not, are going to continue working from home because those businesses have determined they can manage that with remote work or telework. And so those folks probably won't come back into the commuter ranks as much as they might have. There will be some folks coming back to physical work, like the city is in the process of kind of a stepped opening of all of our city services and folks coming back into the office. And so, yeah, there will be a little bit more traffic and foot traffic, but it's, I wouldn't notice because it's been busy for the last year. After that first initial, probably 4-month period in 2020 where everything was really locked down, it picked right back up, and folks are out moving around pretty much as they used to be. So, and the PD, our operations really haven't changed substantially in the last 2 years. So.
No, that's helpful perspective. Thank you.
I'm
Spencer.
curious. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Spencer raised his hand. I got to give it to him, Joy.
Yeah, you're right.
Thanks, Alan. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
So back to the in-service training, can you tell us a little bit about what topics are covered and how that works?
So in-service for us is most often focused around state mandates and certification mandates. So all of our sworn staff are certified through DPSST, which is the state certification agency, for lack of a better term. And so they set down mandatory minimum training hours in different topics. And those topics don't necessarily come up year to year. Sometimes I'm on a 3-year cycle to get so many hours in each of these different topics. So our goal is a minimum of, I think we try to offer 24 to 30 hours a year for each officer in these mandatory topics. So in service this go round, every officer has seen the same 10-hour day. And that was 3 hours of diversity, equity, and inclusion training, which was actually a citywide training. It happened for the rest of the city last August. It happened for us in this in-service cycle. So that was the first block. And then the second block was updating all of our certification on CPR and AED. There was a 2-hour block on that, which also happens to be a kind of newly legislated mandate from the Oregon State Legislature in the last year. We were already meeting that goal, but some smaller departments, that's a little bit harder. But now that's a statewide mandate. So 2-hour block on that. And then we finished, and I can't remember how long the block was. It must have been 4 or 5 hours, but DUI enforcement and standardized field sobriety tests. We have to be recertified on that every couple of years. And I haven't arrested a DUI in 11 years. So it's kind of useless for me. That being said, we get grant money from the Oregon Department of Transportation to do DUI enforcement. They pay the overtime bill so that we can send officers out to just strictly work DUI enforcement. In much the same way that ODOT will provide grant funds for like the 217 construction zone. They'll pay us overtime to go out and work enforcement details in that construction zone. So one of ODOT's mandates is that every officer in the department, including the chief, is certified in SFSTs. And so even though it's not really our job anymore, we train. So it was a good refresher to me, and more than the physically doing the tests, it's really about case law updates, because DUI case law is constantly changing. And so it's hard if you're not doing it regularly. It's really hard to stay current with it. So that was this spring's IST. So
Right. Thank you.
You bet. Joy, you had something?
Well, most of it was answered, and I'm hoping that your CPR training is just as useless.
Well, to be honest with you, I wouldn't say we do CPR a lot, but we use it. And I don't use it much. I don't get out of the office much, but it, our officers, we tend to arrive at CPR calls faster than fire does. We usually beat them by about a minute. And so it's imperative that our officers get there early, get started in CPR. And then when fire gets there, we either team do CPR with fire, or they tap us out and we step out and they do all their big equipment and go into CPR. But we've been very successful with TVF&R doing CPR on folks. So
That's great to hear.
Yeah. Anything else? All right. Thanks for your time, guys.
Thanks so much, AJ. Thanks for being here. Let's go ahead and shoot it over to Amy.
Yeah, hi everyone. So MYAB is continuing to work on all of our projects, but I'm mainly with the group that's continuing our work on the Youth Summit. So that's on May 26th, in case you forgot. But we're almost done with our plan. We have speakers and workshop leaders kind of lined up for all of our main block structures. So I forget how much I talked about last time, but basically we have like about 6 workshops that are going to be happening, and then 2 main sessions in the resource center. So students from across Beaverton will be able to meet and talk about important issues, and then attend like smaller workshops where they'll hear from speakers either about their career and their experience with various things, or they'll be able to have community conversations around things like how we can improve our school system, or how we can improve like diversity and talk about that. So we're finalizing all of that right now. We're really excited. Next month we'll be pushing out all of our social media stuff and advertising, but that's where we are with that. Other things, just kind of youth related. I know BSD is reevaluating their mask policy in schools. So that's kind of like it depends on who you ask, but it can be a concern for some students right now. So I believe they sent out a survey to the community and they're going to be making a decision on that. Oh yeah, so right now we're planning for completely in person, but we might record the main sessions kind of in like the theater area. So we're hoping for that to kind of be online, but the workshop sessions will be like more kind of an intimate setting. So those won't be online. But yeah, thank you for the question. Any other questions or comments?
I just was wondering, thank you so much for that update, Amy. And I know later we're going to be talking about the comprehensive review of the SRO program. And I was just looking through the PowerPoint that I shared with all of you and just looking at their timeline, because I know that there's a big portion of what the Sea Change folks are trying to do is interview a lot of students. And I'm just imagining this might be one of those areas where they could really get a lot of reception. But I think you said it's in May, and I'm looking at their timeline now. In May and July is when they're actually looking to develop, put all the recommendations and information to get from this survey. But I don't know, if your group or whatnot is interested in maybe talking to those folks, but happy to make that connection if you think there's some value there.
Yeah, thank you actually for bringing that up. That's kind of one of the focuses of one of our workshops. We're going to be bringing in people from BSAC, which they've been doing some work with that. It's like the student council kind of with BSD. And they also have been sending out a survey just to schools in general. The thing with surveys though is not a lot of people fill them out. So that's a bit of a problem. But yeah, we are hoping for kind of like a conversation that's safe for people, comfortable for people to, state their ideas and their concerns with the SROs. So that's kind of one of the things we've been thinking about. Yeah.
Thanks, Amy. Any other questions for Amy? All right, let's go ahead and move on. Ashley, hello.
Hi, everyone. How are you doing today?
Good.
Good. Okay, I'm going to give a couple quick updates because I'm on your agenda later. But our new parking garage is open over near the Round and the new Patricia Research Center for the Arts, which we had a grand opening ribbon cutting for yesterday. And the first performance is on March 8th. I think I don't know if it's sold out, but there's lots of really amazing performances coming up. So definitely check that out. I have requested that we really make this accessible to everyone. A few years ago, I had the honor of getting to see Hamilton when it came to Portland, and I got to do that through their lottery, which they offer every show, and tickets are $10 if you win the lottery. And so I asked that we do something similar through the PRCA, because to make this truly a place for our community and a place that's accessible to everyone, we need to make sure that it's not something that only wealthy people can access. So they're working on what that looks like for our center, but I'm really happy to report that they will be doing something similar, whether that's giving away or lottery or something. So I'm really excited. And when I know more about how, I'll let you know. March 8th is also the filing deadline to run for office. So for this May 17th election, so there are 4 seats on city council. So just letting you know that deadline is coming up. The state of city is also coming up March 27th. And starting yesterday, we had our first in-person council meeting since COVID shut everything down. And for the first meeting of the month, we will do council in person, but it's still a hybrid meeting. So you can get on Zoom, you can call in, you could actually come to the lobby and do public testimony like through the lobby. But it's really nice because we really wanted to keep that accessible nature of like the Zoom meeting. But there were some of us in person and it went pretty well. And then we're going to talk about work plan and our goals and priorities later. So I'll save it for that. And we can talk about all the things that council has set are our priorities for the next 2 years. So if there's any questions about the little announcements I made, happy to take those. And if you have questions about priorities, we'll save that for later.
Any questions, folks? Cool. Thanks so much, Ashley. I'll go ahead and do the staff liaison updates. I watched last month's recording and I saw Alexis actually did a share screen and put the updates on the screen. Do y'all like that? Should I do that too? I'm seeing nodding heads. Okay. I'm going to share my screen then. Boom. And share. Okay. Hopefully folks can see. Do you see March updates for board commissions?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
A little hard to see, like it's very small.
That's what people tell me whenever I share my screen, but for me, it's huge. I
Hmm.
don't know if I could zoom in here. I don't have a zoom in button.
Okay, that's okay.
I'm sorry, I'm just gonna go with it, but I could also send these over to you afterwards if you'd like. So March news, the Patricia Research Center, Center for the Arts, or the Research, is open. It's here. They're having the grand opening in the spring. So it's, let's see, planned for Sunday, March 13th. So that's coming up. I think many of you know where the Patricia Research Center is. It's right next to City Hall. Nestled near the round between Southwest Cedar Hills Boulevard and Southwest Hall Boulevard. You could visit theresearch.org for a full listing of upcoming events, safety protocols, and more. Someone recently reached out to me wondering how they could actually reserve space in there. And so I directed them to this website, but then I also sent them just some staff contact info if you're interested. So if you are interested in something like that, just let me know. As many of you might know, the city is now offering expanded in-person services across all city facilities. So we're still, practicing distancing, and they're allowing a few folks in at a time. The 4th and 5th floors of City Hall are closed off, but of course, if you are meeting with somebody like myself, I could always let you in. So what do they have here? While many city services were already being offered in person, other services have been added and may look different than previously offered, such as by appointment. Virtual services that have proven effective are likely to continue as far as they meet the city's service models and public needs. So where I've seen a lot of this, you could come in to pay bills and whatnot, but they have a pretty robust system online as well. That's just kind of what they've had to do with the pandemic. Is to improve that system. So maybe there's one silver lining there, but you can come in to the 2nd and 4th floors where they have the billing departments. It's water and billing that's on the 2nd floor. Let's see. Yeah, I'm not going to go ahead and repeat the council meeting changes because Councilor Ashley Hartmeier-Prigg just said those. But I will just remind you all, State of the City is March 29th. So you can tune in Tuesday, March 29th, 12 p.m. For Beaverton Voices, State of the City 2022. The event will premiere on the city's webpage and on social media. So just go to the main city webpage to find it, but they'll be promoting it through the city Facebook as well. So I'm not sure if y'all follow the city's Facebook, but you should see some announcements there as well. Major topics include, but it's not limited to, Beaverton's ongoing response to COVID-19, economic recovery, downtown development, ARPA funding, and addressing homelessness. So lots of big topics there. The other thing that's not included in here, but I wanted to take some time just to share with you. Can you still see my screen? I went to another, okay, cool. So Welcoming Week is coming up. Well, it's going to be in September. It starts the 2nd week of September. What's the exact date? September 9th through 18th. And so it's an annual week where we have a series of welcoming events where we support organizations, groups, and individuals who want to host an events that bring together immigrants, refugees, US born residents to raise awareness of the benefits of being welcoming to everybody. There's some objectives here that are laid out for the Welcoming Week grants, and Welcoming Week grants just opened up actually yesterday. So only one person has actually reached out to inquire about the grants. So with that said, there's still a lot of room left. You have until May 6th to apply if you're interested. Awards can be up to $1,500 per project. So if you are curious about any of that, I will actually go ahead and drop the link in the chat. But with that, are there any questions? Spencer.
Thanks, Paolo. When can we expect that this commission will begin meeting in person again?
I am not going to answer that because every time I try to, it changes. And I feel like I'm starting to lie to people. I thought that was going to happen maybe this month, but I'm expecting another answer hopefully later this month. And so April, maybe we might start getting to normal, but don't hold your breath and don't hold me accountable to that because I'm not actually sure.
Is this a public entity issue, or is Beaverton an outlier in this regard? Do you know?
I don't.
Most private organizations with which I'm either affiliated or aware of are climbing back in, man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, one thing I want to mention too is, so we actually had a staff liaison meeting last week, and we had the city attorney there to talk about these potential changes that may be coming, i.e. going into in-person meetings. And one of the things that Grace Wong mentioned is that even after all the emergency mandates have been lifted, we are required to continue our safety procedures for 30 days after the mandate's been lifted. So continuing with distancing, continuing with masking up and all those things. So that will definitely affect us. And so that's the only update I could share, unfortunately, right now for in-person meetings.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Any other questions? Cool. Before we move on, I want to actually turn it back to Spencer. We should have had on the agenda, and I apologize for this, but the land acknowledgement reading. So Spencer, can I go ahead and turn it over to you?
Thank you. As we've talked about before, our land acknowledgement, our native lands acknowledgement is a work in progress. And we will be reaching out to the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde to get their advice on the direction in which we should go. I have a brief statement to read. The sovereignty, well-being, cultures, and languages of indigenous peoples are born of their homelands, and that makes these lands and waters precious to Native communities. All of us have the responsibility to treat them with the respect and care they deserve, and to steward them carefully for the next generation. Please do your part. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Spencer. I'm going to turn it back over to Joy, but just a heads up, if you see me keep turning off my camera and stepping away, it's because my daughter is in this screaming mode right now, screaming her head off. I heard it's maybe purple cries. So parents, if you have advice for me, let me know outside of this meeting, but I apologize for keep turning off my screen. Joy.
Thanks, Paolo. We've all been there, right? Us parents. So I, with the COVID world and all of our Zoom meetings, one of the changes that hasn't really translated well to the virtual world is something that I find irritating. We've all been in meetings, I think, where somebody runs off with the meeting. And this isn't because of something that's happened in HREC, but I am a proactive person with a background in the fire department where we're always planning. You want to be ahead of the game. So I have had the experience where trying to have a meeting and someone just runs off in some direction and just kind of takes the meeting away. And then you end up on this tangent. Shake your head yes if you've ever had this experience. One of the ways that this is handled under Robert's rules. So we're going to have a Robert's rules minute. Is that anything not on the agenda, the person with the gavel can strike the gavel, and it's when the gavel hits, that is a sign that it's the end of something. It actually has legal standing. It's the formation of a contract in an auction, trivia. But we don't have that because we're not in a room using a gavel. And that tapping the gavel stops one thing and it moves it to another piece of business. So if we're talking about an upcoming event or welcoming week grants, once we finish that in person, usually I would do tap and we would move to the next form of business. And in person, if someone runs off with a subject and wants to talk about air pollution or Ukraine or some other thing that's important to them but isn't on the agenda for tonight's meeting, I would be able to go tap, speaker is out of order, and we would resume talking about the part of the agenda we are actually on. So I was problem solving with Paolo, and so for virtual meetings, we came up with the idea that since it's limited who can mute people, it's Paolo. Yay, Paolo has all the power. And in person, the gavel tapping would stop that business. So for virtual meetings, we thought when whoever has the gavel, if someone runs off with a meeting like that, they show the gavel and whoever has the mute button mutes everyone. It stops the conversation. And then we can resume the portion of the agenda that we are on. How does that sound to you? Okay, so that by consensus model, which is also part of Robert's rules, it's the new rules. So whoever has the gavel, right now it's me speaking, but if Paolo was running an order of business, or Sabdy, or even Spencer, he could show a gavel and whoever has the mute button would mute everyone. And then we can go back to orderly business. That work? Perfect. I like heading off trouble before it happens, don't you? Okay, so do we need to review the community agreements that we assume a positive intention with people and we stick to the list? We're adults here, right? We're good? Is everyone muted? All right, so let's just review them. So first of all, we're going to use the correct names and gender pronouns. So can I call on you one at a time to read from the list that I just started? So next on my screen is Molly. Molly, would you feel comfortable reading the next one?
Yes, of course. The second one on the list is keep an open mind.
Perfect, thank you. Karen?
Be respectful.
Thank you. Sabdy?
Make an emphasis on the group as a whole, avoid divisiveness.
Perfect, awesome. Spencer?
Stay on topic.
Perfect, and that's what this is about. Kathy?
Respect time.
Perfect. Nice. Paolo?
No. I think I'm muted, aren't I?
We can hear you.
Can you,
Right.
oh, you can hear me? Okay. Respect time. Consider all manners of participation.
Perfect. Lisa.
Take care of yourself.
Excellent. Amy.
Practice patience.
Excellent. Tanya.
Assume positive intent and understand impact.
Perfect. Corey.
Remember whom we serve and why we serve.
Fabulous. Councilor Hartmeier-Prigg.
Be willing to accept feedback.
Awesome. And the only one left is AJ. Oh, you're muted.
Speak loudly and clearly and off mute.
Perfect. We should put that on there. Thank you very much for walking through this with me and for adopting our new standard that we can just stop things. And now that we have this plan, we'll never need it. It's just my plan. It's great.
Cool. I'll go ahead and add them to the community agreements, and then I'll send it out to everybody.
Perfect.
And I'm realizing I don't know how to spell gavel. But,
Gavel.
oh yeah, I'll figure it out. But yeah, thank you.
I think Sabdy's next.
There. Okay, or hi again. So we are going to talk a little bit about the retreat part 1 and part 2. So first off, for those of you guys who were able to make it to the first retreat, thank you. It was so nice to finally see you guys in person. Some of you I have been serving with since last year, and I've literally never seen your face. So it was really nice to be able to connect and hang out, enjoy some food, and we also got to enjoy a very small sliver of sun. It was out for like 10 minutes before it was gone. So part 1, I know we had like a plan of, a more strategic bonding day for part 1, but it really kind of just was much more free flow. We were able to connect, talk about things that were important to us in the city of Beaverton, talk about our histories and how we ended up here in Beaverton. And that was it. So for part 2, as Paolo already sent out, is on Saturday, March 19th from 12 to 4. Sorry about that. From 12 to 4, we will be back at BG Cartel. Oh, no.
No,
We're
on
not.
Zoom.
Am I confused? We're on Zoom. I'm confusing that with
We're gonna be on Zoom.
another thing that we're doing next week. We are back on Zoom. So please carve out the time. It would be awesome to have everyone there. This is when we're really going to get into still some team building. We're definitely going to make some time to connect, but we're going to be setting the HVAC priorities for 2022. So it's really important to have you guys there. Bring your ideas, bring your thinking caps, bring your passions, and what you want to see HVAC really go after for 2022. Okay. We'll also be talking about just a couple of things, HVAC history and the whole how we got here, because that's important. Our history is important. 2021 highlights our HVAC mission, and we really want to talk about a set of objectives, that distinguish us as a commission. Okay, so just please mark your calendars, Saturday, March 19th from 12 to 4. And that is it. Joy, you have anything you want to add? Paolo, did I miss anything?
I'm excited.
Oh. Cool, Paolo.
I think that's great.
Okay. Are there any questions? No? Okay, cool. Then I will turn it back over to Joy.
Perfect. So, as you may or may not know, this is year 3 of working with a recommendation to reconsider police officers in schools and our SROs. And it really came out of our police review work that we did 2 years ago. And then last year went to the city council. Our recommendations were considered, and a proposal went out to consider that question. And at a previous, was it last 2 commissioner city council meetings ago, The folks came that were picked, the comprehensive review of the school officer resource program, and they presented. Sea Change was the organization that was selected through that city process. And they presented on February 8th, my brother's birthday, the review of the program. And I wanted it to be presented to us because we asked the question. And so, however, because we asked the questions and avoiding the appearance of a conflict of interest, since this was presented in a public forum, it was best practice not to have them come and present here what they presented at the city council meeting. However, I believe we have the footage keyed up. You were sent the slide deck of what they said, and we can hear what is coming out of this thing that we did. We did this. It was kind of awesome to track this project from, we asked the question and here we're making actual change in the city. Sorry, I'm geeking out a minute. That's really cool that we did this. So I believe, Paolo, do you have the footage queued up?
Yeah.
So that we can see what the city council, what was presented to the city council, and then we can talk about what's next.
Of course.
Is that okay with everyone? Yeah.
And I'll just add to that Pooja is the contact with Sea Change that you'll hear from here in just a moment here. And I talked to her earlier, and she is totally open and available to, if y'all want to contact her. She even said that when she gets a chance, she's going to go ahead and watch the recording to this so she could pay attention to what your questions are. She was even going to try to join in on the meeting, but she went to Costco and I was like, I'm not going to see you for another 3 hours. So yeah, Pooja is definitely down to be part of this process moving forward. But I'll go ahead and play this and I'll take from there.
Perfect.
Okay.
Agenda bill tonight. Our first presentation of the evening is Agenda Bill 22038, an update on School Resource Office Program Comprehensive Review and Analysis.
Hi, good evening. My name is Pooja Bhatt, and I'm a consultant with Sea Change, consulting practice based here in Portland, Oregon. And we're really excited to provide an update to you all on the process that we'll be using for the School Resource Officer review over the next several months. But before we get into that, I want to make sure that my colleagues have an opportunity to introduce themselves before I start screen sharing. So first, I'll allow my colleague Amy Craig to introduce herself.
Good evening, all. Amy Craig, partner with Sea Change.
And Monica Cox.
Hi, Monica Cox, and partnering with Sea Change on this project.
All right, and I will share my screen. Can you see this okay? Great. Well, thank you for having us here today. Really, for the past year and a half, almost 2 years, the Beaverton school districts and you as city leaders have heard from many people in the community, from educators to students to community members, parents, about school safety and the role of school resource officers. School resource officers are police officers who work in schools. And as many of you may know, the Beaverton School Board and representatives of the City Council here have worked together over time to really develop a process for this review that we're really excited to talk to you about. Many of you have had conversations about the School Resource Officer Program. You've had work sessions here at the Council. The School Board has also had work sessions about school resource officers, and representatives of both the board and the council have worked together to develop a request for proposals last year to choose a consultant for this comprehensive SRO process. And so we are those consultants, and we had our contract finalized in December, and we're here to provide an update of what that process will actually entail. And it's really important to keep this collaboration between the city of Beaverton and the school district in mind, because the city of Beaverton funds a large share of the school district's SRO program. This slide really provides an understanding of what the purpose is of the SRO program. It's as stated in the Beaverton School District's request for proposals, which was again co-developed by representatives of this council and the Beaverton School Board. And this process is really intended to be comprehensive in nature and to result in recommendations about proposed actions related to the school resource officer program.
I'm up here.
The request for proposals was very thorough and had several research questions that the review process is intended to answer. What we've done on this slide is really to summarize the many research questions. Ultimately, there's three big buckets of what this SRO review process will cover. One, how does the SRO program actually work? Two, who's served well by the program, who isn't? And what does the research say? So let's break that down just a little bit. So the first piece of how does the school resource officer currently work? There are many questions, again, developed by the board and representatives of the council that really articulated questions around, well, what do the school resource officers do? What training do they have? What training do they need? Who do they report to? What are the challenges? How do they incorporate best practices, and how are they used within the district specifically? Folks are also interested in how school administrators and teachers and other school staff determine when to call a school resource officer and what policies guide practices that are happening on the ground each day. In terms of who's served well by the program and who isn't, the request for proposals was really an invitation to think about what a student-centered process might look like. So we're really starting with this question of what do students think of the SRO program? And you'll see a little bit about how we're incorporating student voice in just a few slides. But we're going to be asking students themselves in surveys and focus groups of what factors are important to them regarding safety and what do they think of SROs. We know that it's also important to hear from parents, from school staff, and from SROs themselves. And so our task is to really hear from all of these different groups to understand what are the similarities and differences between these groups and among these groups. And what do they think the purpose of the program is regarding the SRO program? There's also an interest in what does the research say? So what does the research say about the positive impacts of SROs and the negative impacts? And what are other districts around the country doing related to school resource officers? And finally, from other districts around the state, what are they doing in addition to or instead of SROs with policies and practices related to safety? So this, again, is just a summary of the types of questions that the SRO review will cover. So what's the timeline and what are the key activities? This slide, we really try to summarize essentially what the work plan is. We started our work in mid-December, just before the holiday break for the district, really starting project planning, beginning a literature review, beginning a policy review and quantitative data collection. In February and March, so this month and next month, we'll be doing surveys. And on our next slide, we'll share with you who we're going to be surveying, as well as who we're going to be inviting to focus groups. So February through April is really surveys and focus groups. And if you look at this slide, really December through April is data collection mode. Analysis of that data begins in May, and we'll be writing and developing recommendations for a report that we'll submit to the district by June 30th. We'll first present to the leadership of the district and the board, and also then shortly thereafter present to the council as well. And there's been discussions in the RFP as well about a joint council and board work session. So the details of that are to be determined, but that's the timeline that's currently mapped out. On this slide, we have a summary of who we're going to be surveying and who we're going to be inviting into focus groups. So Beaverton School District, middle school and high school students will be invited to surveys and focus groups and focus groups. Parents and guardians will have an opportunity to fill out a survey. Same with school staff. For the school resource officers themselves, it's important to hear their voices. There are relatively few of them compared to these other stakeholder groups, so we think that interviews will be a more effective data collection strategy there. And really the reason that we want to do surveys is that they really allow for broad outreach. We really want to make sure all of these stakeholder groups have an opportunity to provide input. So for middle schoolers and high schoolers and parents in the district, school staff, we want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to fill out the surveys. And then we like to do focus groups and interviews for more in-depth engagement. You can't ask certain questions in a survey, they're better in conversation. And so we'll have that deeper focused engagement that happens in focus groups. And the next few slides are all similar in that what they're conveying in information. So I'll just walk through this one with a little bit more detail, and I'll move more quickly through the later slides. So this slide is really about high school students that will be focus grouping. As you saw on this slide, we're really going to allow middle school and high school students to fill out a survey, but we're going to really invite high schoolers to participate in focus groups. So for those high schoolers, we plan to do 10 focus groups, and each focus group will be capped at 8 people, really trying to make sure that those are really safe conversations, comfortable conversations for students to have their voices heard. And so we have to limit it. But we do want representation from multiple schools throughout the district. And so a virtual setting will allow us to do that. What we're going to do is really have a targeted and a universal approach. So what do we mean by that? So every high school student will have an opportunity to complete a survey and to sign up to participate in focus groups. But we know that many more than 80 might want to participate in focus groups. So we will be doing a random selection process using a sign up through an online interest form. And when we do that random selection, we will be having considerations for diversity, including geographic representation across the district when we do that random selection process. So again, the goal is really to make sure that outreach is inclusive as possible with universal outreach. And we know that some students are not typically going to fill out a survey unless they have encouragement either from their peers or from a trusted adult. And so we want to also do a targeted approach to reach traditionally underrepresented populations. And by that, we mean populations that are traditionally underrepresented in research, in policy, and program design. And so these are the populations that we have identified: students enrolled in alternative programs, students with disabilities, students navigating poverty, students who have had any interactions with SROs, and those who've experienced exclusionary discipline, and then multiple identity groups here. For parents and guardians, we plan to do 8 focus groups and a similar strategy of both universal outreach so that every parent will have an opportunity to complete a survey and to sign up to participate in focus groups with random selection and a targeted outreach strategy as well. Same with school staff, in which we plan to do 5 focus groups. And we want to reach these groups of school staff who will also be instrumental in our connections with those groups of students that we also want to make sure we target. So counselors, graduation mentors, labor partners, adults who work with students with special needs and behavioral health challenges. As we mentioned earlier, school resource officers are also really part of this review. We want to hear their perspectives. And so we will be inviting the public safety director at the Beaverton School District for an interview, as well as to the chiefs of the 2 police departments that serve the school district, as well as the sheriff's office. And we also want to invite at least 2 SROs per law enforcement agency to participate. And all interviews and focus groups, like we said in the other slides, will be voluntary. Finally, we recognize that many community members who live in the Beaverton area may not have a current student in the district. They may not be a current staff person, but they have a perspective that they want to share. And so we'll have a community input forum for them as well that will give them an opportunity to weigh in on the SRO conversation as well. I'll stop sharing there. My colleagues are here if we have any questions for us.
Councilor Mitchell.
Yeah, thank you for that information. I have a question about the targeted groups. So what is the action that will be taken? So, you reach out to the basic, group universally, students, and then you're going to select or target the other groups. What does that action look like? I mean, do you call them? Do you Do you pay them? I mean, what does that look like?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Counselor. We are in conversation right now with the school staff to find out what the best path for reaching those students, what those best paths are. So our plan is to get to, like Pooja was saying, peers and trusted adults that can encourage those students to participate. And so that's working through district level administrators, to work through building level administrators, to reach those staff that have direct relationships with those students. So that includes, like we mentioned, counselors, graduation mentors, people who support students in that way. So that's our current plan.
Okay, and then the survey that's going to go out to everybody, and especially the community members just at large, will there be questions that identify, because I know that was a point of contention in past surveys, was nobody knew who responded, what their race was, do they have children, are those questions going to be so pointed?
Yeah, we do. We are going to ask questions related to demographic characteristics, but they will be voluntary because we can't require people to share that information. But we do provide some narrative to explain to them why we're asking that question and why it's important for them to share it.
And will there be a way to be able to decipher between community members at large and then parents who have children in the school district? Okay, and then lastly, I just wanted to say that when the recommendations come through, I hope that what we're reading is based on Beaverton need, because I think that there's been I've read a lot of different recommendations everywhere, and it's like, oh, well, we recommend this because this other place does that. And so I think what we've really been intentional is focus on Beaverton, hoping for Beaverton need, and how do we address that? So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Hassan.
Yeah, I just thought of a question now listening to Councilor Mitchell. Are you capturing socioeconomic status by chance or income range? Just curious.
We are not, and part of that is because it's legally a blurry area.
That's fine. It's totally fine. I was just curious. I just want to say, like, having formerly taught in schools, seen positive experiences, seen negative experiences, this is truly a comprehensive overview, and I see that in the presentation, and I feel really thankful that you are leading this work, because when you said comprehensive in the first slide, I saw comprehensive in every following slide. So thank you so much for helping us get closer to what is best for our kids.
Thank you, Councilor Hassan.
Councilor Hartmeier-Prigg.
Thank you for the presentation. It's really good to see, I like the comprehensiveness of it as well. And I also like the request that, hey, we want to make sure we have solutions that are best for Beaverton. I just had a question on the survey and the interview opportunities for students. If it's someone who, may have a disability, do we have accommodations built into the outreach, into the surveys or into the interviews to make sure that it's an inclusive conversation?
We will be working with educators and school staff at the building level to do that targeted outreach. And we imagine that they know their students' needs the best. And so we are working in close collaboration. We have a strong partnership with the district, has been fantastic in being able to connect us with the right folks to help plan for this. So we imagine that that will continue to be part of the conversation as well.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Tibna.
Thanks. To the point about doing the lit reviews, curious if you can talk a little bit more about what.
Okay. So I watched that live and it was various. Yell at my dog, hang on. We've had these same cats for months, but So now I want to hear from you guys, from us. This is us. So what did we think about that? Spencer.
Thanks. And thanks to Joy and our counselor for attending. My question is, the slide deck and the presentation were a little fuzzy about if we get to be part of the process. They wouldn't be doing this if it weren't for us. So do we get a seat at the table? Do we get to participate in roundtable discussions or be a fly on the wall, or how's that going to work, do you think? Or do you know?
You want to
We
take
get
this
a
one? Greg?
seat. We get one seat. Sure, we get one seat. Paolo said they wanted one of us to be part of this too, since, yes, we started this. So we do get a seat at the table.
Great.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that, Joy? Like, what does that look like?
So far there was a whole process of a request for RFP process that involved lots of meetings that I went to in selecting this group, and they were head and shoulders way above everybody else that applied. I can say in hindsight, because I'm not affecting anything, they were by far answering the questions that were being asked. And so HREC has been asked to provide a person to continue with that.
Can I add a little bit to that?
Go ahead, Paolo. Go ahead.
So if y'all might recall, Joy has actually been sitting on this table for, I don't know how long now. Was it 5 months? 3 months?
years. This is year 3.
But when they started the SRO process,
It was 5 months of
hire the consult. Okay, 5
meetings.
months. Yeah. So Joy will continue to be that person, and will interview with Pooja and Amy with Sea Change. And I think one of the purposes of having this space here is to really gather what are your questions that Joy can bring to them when she interviews with them. But of course, I think in addition to that, y'all are always welcome to take the voluntary surveys. Yeah.
Lisa.
Yeah, so did they, like, I know they listed a bunch of like the questions they're thinking of asking, but did they list the survey questions that they're going to be using? Okay, because I'd love to see like what the survey questions will include, and like, are the surveys different between the different stakeholders that they're going to be asking? And then like, what are the questions they're going to be asking the focus group? So just a little bit more detail is like what I wanted to know. But maybe they're not sure yet, and they're going to use some of the information gathering piece to develop that. So I'm just curious about more detail personally.
Those are the meetings I get to sit in now. So what you want to be asked, please tell me. Tell me what you want to know, and I will take it to them and find out and bring it back.
I'm happy to ask for those questions too. I'm assuming that's not going to come up in your interview. But if you want me to, Joy, I could go ahead and ask them for that and just send it over to you all.
That'd be great.
Okay, I'll do that.
Spencer's hand.
Molly's first.
Molly's hand.
Oh, thank you, Spencer. So I also sat in on the presentation as well when the city council did it, or was presented to the city council. And I think that there's a fair amount of support in sort of the methods that they described for this group that's doing the evaluation. I mean, it's a really, like they said, it's a comprehensive evaluation. And I used to work in program evaluations for criminal justice programs. And so looking at it, I mean, it's a good mix of an implementation of what is our program. Are we evaluating it in a way that's comparable to other places that have it? So they're doing that. What trainings do they have? What training do they need? And then they're doing a perceptions of procedural fairness, which is what do people think of it? The people who be impacted, the students. I am most interested to see if they are going to be able to allow the survey, like Lisa said, what I'd love to be able to see it, the questions that are being offered, which I'm sure they're gathering during their literature review of what are the common surveys that are used, if there are any surveys that are robust, that have been, replicated at all. And additionally, I'm interested, they didn't answer it during the questions, but I'm interested to know what the translation offer will be, because it seems to me like they say they're going to target populations, but I don't see the accessibility response to that. So will it be translated in Spanish? Will it be translated in Portuguese? Will it be translated in some other language? So I'm really interested to see that. And I'm sure that'll come out of their lit review. But hopefully when we see a survey, we can see in the way that it's actually being translated, and not just, you know, in a way that's Google Translate, that's using the city of Beaverton's translation services.
Do you want me to answer that translation question, Joy?
Sure.
Okay, cool. I don't want to, overstep, but
No. That's a good question.
So no, that's a wonderful question. And they actually interviewed myself and a few other city staff as well. And that was one of the recommendations I made. And I also recommended that they talk to the BSD multilingual department as well. And I just got their flyers, and we're just going through it, making sure it's the final copy and whatnot. And I'm actually going to go ahead and get them translated. Same with their flyers will have a QR code on it. And so then that will lead to another web page. And I'm going to try to help them figure out translation too on those pages. Because what we see sometimes, it's like we gather folks from the Korean speaking or simplified Chinese or something, a community to participate in something, but then they get to this point and it's not translated anymore. So I'm supporting them with that process, and we're going to follow the school district has 8 priority languages that they use, and we're just going to go ahead and follow those 2. We have the budget for it, so I'm just going to go ahead and get those translated. Great question.
Kathy.
Sorry,
Spencer.
Spencer was first.
Okay, Spencer.
Real quick, thanks, Kathy. Who decides at the end of the day? My assumption is it's really up to the school district. If this thing's going to be turned off, isn't that their decision? Regardless of, there can be changes made to the program and so on, and presumably that would be a joint decision. But if the recommendations are that that the program be terminated, that's pretty much up to the school district, right?
I was in those meetings, and the budget's actually 50-50.
The budget
And
for the study is 50-50.
the budget for the SROs is 50-50 as well. So, yeah, my understanding is that the city council and the school board were working closely together, but that it was an equal say.
Maybe.
And I don't know if there's an impasse, if it's a 50 yes, 50 no. We should ask the city council, because it's their decision. That would be what's the tiebreaker? That's a good question.
Well, yeah,
If
I mean,
it's a tie.
This is all speculative, I guess. But the properties belong to the school district, not the city.
The city funds 50% of the SRO budget. It's a joint
Understood.
thing.
I
Yeah.
understand. No, I get that. But if the school district doesn't want city personnel on their property, that's kind of the thing, right? Anyway, that's it. Thank you.
I believe it's Kathy now, right?
Okay, thank you. I would just like to say I have shared frustration with other HRAC members about how slow this process goes. And then I also was at the meeting where these folks presented. I am so impressed by the process that was followed. And I really believe, and thank you, Joy, for being part of that. And Paolo too, really.
Yes.
And so I just want to say it's admirable. And Thank you all.
It takes all of us. Thanks, Kathy. I believe Amy was next. Okay.
Yes, I put a link in the chat. Hopefully people were able to see it, but that's the link that students were sent by Beaverton School District. So if you want to kind of take a look at the questions, they're all in there. It's kind of a long survey. There's some multiple choice and some longer ones. But I think overall, like the main concern I have with the survey is just it's not going to reach enough people or the people that kind of need to see it, especially because the way that they did it, they just put it on. So students have Canvas, which is like how we access all our course materials. So there's like an announcement page, or like when you log into the dashboard, they put it kind of up at the top. But to be quite honest, students usually just like scroll right past it, you know, and they don't really click on anything or do extra work if they don't have to. So I am a little bit concerned about how it's going to reach students. I know there was some talk, at least with students I know on like BSAC or other interest groups, were saying that it should be introduced like during class time, during we have like study hall or like kind of an announcement time. So that, I don't know, Joy, if you could bring that up if you're in a meeting somewhere, but I think that would kind of be helpful, just because if people kind of self-select to take this survey, the results are going to be a little bit skewed.
They're going to be skewed. So
Yeah.
what should they use? How do we reach all of them?
I think that it should be like class time, 5-10 minutes in class, set aside, everyone, okay, now like here's the link, like put a QR code up, whatever. And then everyone takes it kind of at the same time, start of first period, 8th period, whatever, right? And that's how we get people to do it, because I don't think that people are going to do it otherwise, especially since it's a little bit long or maybe a little intimidating to people that are like, you know, not encouraged to speak out about it, or are a little bit unsure of themselves. So yeah.
So if it's long, would it be better if it was busted up into pieces?
I like taking it at different times. I don't think that would go over well, just because people would either forget or like, you know, students kind of aren't the best at managing responsibilities all the time. But I think just having a uniform time for everyone to take it would yield the most responses and the stuff that we need.
Awesome.
I know Lisa put in the chat MYAB. So we have been trying to work with the district on it, and we're going to talk to our schools. You know, sometimes we do morning announcements, but there's only so much that like a 30-second announcement can do to encourage people to take it, you know? So it's really kind of a district or like a school-based decision to have teachers be like, yeah, you need to do this at the start of class. And in high schools, and if it's the same as when I was in middle school, there's a period where you have work time, and at the start of it, it's specifically for things like this, like general announcements or surveys or watching the school news or whatever. So that would be a perfect time, and it's not really taking away from an actual class, if that makes sense. But if we do that, then we lose the entire senior population because we don't have that class. But yeah.
How about a Facebook app or a Facebook survey? Would that do well?
There could just be like people, like the school Instagram accounts or whatever could drop the link or make a post about it, but it's kind of the same deal as Canvas. It's not necessarily that it's not reaching people or available to people, it's just people won't click it.
It's a skew. Okay.
Yeah. So I think setting specific time for it is really important, because people need to be told, all right, here's your activity, like this is what you're doing right now. If you like leave it for them to do at home or whatever, it's not
going to happen.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. I think Molly was next.
Just to add on to what Amy was saying, that was one of my concerns as well, is that there isn't an incentive to complete it. And so you are getting the same kind of people who would leave a Yelp review. It's the people who either really hate it or really like it. You're not getting the middle ground in regards to capturing good data. You're not getting the control group. which means you're really lacking the meaningful response if you only have your outliers. When I worked with doing a program evaluation of the law enforcement assisted diversion in Multnomah County, and we actually offered an incentive, and it was that if you completed the survey, you were entered into a raffle for, I think it was like a $50 Amazon gift card. And so that was something that we were able to do because we were a third party. We were able to have that stipend to allot an incentive. I know not every community survey is going to be allotted that kind of fund, but it is something that does offer people the idea to do it. But I really like your idea of trying to just dish out that time of having to complete it. Again, you will always get people who are going to click the bottom answer on everything and switch through it as fast as possible. That's just going to happen. And that's what the evaluator's job is to do, is to clean the data to make it meaningful. It doesn't mean you're getting rid of those. It just means you're actually interpreting it in an accurate way that's representative of your group. So it's going to happen no matter what. I think, though, that either having an incentive or allotting that time is going to get more meaningful data in the long run.
Awesome. Karen.
Yeah, I wanted to follow up on the same topic. I used to teach in Beaverton School District, and every single year there was a survey that Beaverton sends out about student satisfaction, about all kinds of things that happen at school, and do they feel safe, and blah, blah, blah. Do they have somebody they can go to? So Beaverton knows how to do this. They just have to decide to do it. They always took it in school. And we as teachers were told to administer the survey.
So it wouldn't be a stretch or an outlier.
No.
Or this included as this time.
Yeah.
Good to know that.
Yep.
Paolo.
Yeah, I'm really grateful, Amy, for your perspective on this. And I think that really helps here. And I'm just looking through their presentation again, and I know that there was a piece in there about focus groups, and I'm wondering, I know that they're intending to do some targeted outreach as well to figure out who should be in these focus groups and who should they be interviewing, and that's one of the things that I'm kind of supporting with, is helping cultivate this list of folks that they could reach out to, and so I'm wondering, like, ELL programs in schools, if Amy, if they're still having like when I was in school once upon a time at Sunset, there's like an actual ELL department, but then there were actual like ELL classes as well. It was kind of like my homeroom thing that I did. And so I'd love to share that if those things do exist, if they still exist. And if y'all think that if y'all are aware of folks who they should do some targeted outreach to, I'd love to share that as well. Amy, I'm especially looking at you. If there's folks, administrators, they have that list there of, they want to talk to teachers of color, they want to talk to special education staff, but what I found out is they don't really know exactly who those people are, but they need to, be that connect. So my ask is basically, if you have folks that you think I should pass over to Pooja to put in that said list, please share it. And I'd love to send that over.
I just want to speak briefly on that. I don't know like the names of people, but I do know, like, especially Westview has like what they call sheltered classes for students that, English is their second language, or they're like refugees and all of those people. So there are teachers that are specifically in charge of those classes, and they do like altered curriculum, and sometimes they get outreach like this. So reaching out to those classes specifically would be great. I'm sure the other main high schools have that as well. But that would definitely be needed in those classes.
Totally. And when we're having these conversations, I was thinking also of maybe students who, maybe didn't have as great of a relationship with school resource officers. Sometimes most of the students that go to quote unquote like alternative schools, that's what we call it, for like Merlot. Right? We thought, it's if you get in trouble, you go to Merlot, but getting in trouble doesn't necessarily mean you're a bad student or anything. Maybe it's just the system didn't work out for you, right? So it's just like, who are those students also that we need to reach? And it's been a long time since I was in high school. So yeah, I would love to definitely lean on y'all for that.
Yeah,
so
what I can tell you is that administration is a little bit wacky sometimes. So hopefully they'll be receptive to that. But yeah.
Cool. Well, I wrote down look into Westview shelter classes. So thanks.
That's a good thing. Any other thoughts or things that I should bring? This is our chance. We're still in it. It's awesome. What else? What's important that we could pass on to them? Lisa.
I just think, Joy, as you're going through the process, like checking in with Amy on stuff because she like is living.
Oh yeah. Amy's my new best friend.
Yeah.
Are there any parents in here with students in this, with children in this school district? Okay.
I have a question. Joy, is there a deadline that we need to get you these questions by, just in case people want to be able to like think about it a little bit?
Right. Not at this point. Paolo is the keeper and the liaison with me. And so far, nothing is on the calendar. You could bring them to the retreat part 2, or you could email them to Paolo. I'm just thinking here. And we can run them through there.
Okay, great.
Yes, Spencer?
I was just reminded of something. Your answer to my question about having a seat at the table implies the seat at the table will be after the analysis is completed. And what I think I was really asking was, will you have the opportunity to sit in on any of the discussion sessions with the various stakeholders, not necessarily as a participant, but to hear directly what they have to say rather than see the interpretation of it later?
Hello?
I don't know. That's a good question though. That's one that I could definitely ask Pooja.
My intent was earlier rather than later. Yeah.
I don't know if that would be important to you or not.
I think it's important to the process. And hopefully she watches this meeting soon. I did have an interaction with a recent high school student while I was up in Seattle. And I talked about this project with HRAC. And this young lady, she said, you know, she was never a fan of the police officers in schools. And she said the thing was that teachers and society is saying you shouldn't use guns, shouldn't touch guns, shouldn't play with guns, you know, guns are bad. And here they're putting these people heavily armed right in the middle, sitting around, modeling a completely opposite behavior. And how am I supposed to, you know, process that or think about that, or how does that work together? And she's one of those middle folks. She wouldn't say a word. She wouldn't say shit if she had a mouthful. She is a respectful young lady. And I'm very excited with Amy's suggestions of how to get, we want the middle. We want the top of that bell curve. We want the not joiners, not in trouble. We want the kids that are just, we want both ends of the bell curve, but we really want the middle. We want the folks who never say anything, who go along to get along. I want to hear that majority. Paolo.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I just wanted to remind folks, I sent over the final recommendations and which page you could find the SRO specific recommendations on there. But I should have mentioned this, I totally forgot. You could also watch all past meetings, including the ones from the inquiry sessions. And I don't remember exactly which one it is that where SRO was a specific topic for the day. But you can watch that as well. I know a lot of folks in here had a lot to say about that. Cameron Green, who isn't here right now, also shared some stats that Cameron Green always does. So please feel free to watch those, watch that specific meeting if you get a chance.
All right. Are there any other questions, comments, thoughts? Karen?
Well, I've just been private messaging with Paolo about some of my thoughts about the school district, because I did work there for 12 years. I've been out for a few, but still have a lot of contacts in the schools. And if we're trying to contact students, teachers, that kind of thing, the teachers union is a really effective way to get information to all schools from the teacher's perspective. I was on the board for many years and a representative for many years, and they meet once a month, and they may, as a union representing all the teachers, have some opinions already that need to be gathered about the SROs. It's another way into the system besides the administration, which may have a slightly different perspective and values.
Even a camera has a point of view.
And if you'll have contacts for these, like at the teachers union that I could share, Karen, please let me know. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I can do that for you.
Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Tanya, I saw your hand.
Yeah, I just have, it's kind of a random comment. Just that when I was talking with Ellen and some other cops, I can't remember who, but I just remember the disconnect. It's like, why don't they want us there? And how it would just be really interesting if Alan was still here to comment on how they see their role and how the students do. There's such a disconnect that I think, I don't know, it just is a concern to me that there just isn't an understanding. So.
That is true very often. I'm a fan of documentaries, and in the Prohibition documentary by Ken Burns, he talks about how Prohibition initially started as pro-immigrant because it was usurious for a person who's worked all week to then come home Friday night. They'd go out drinking and come home and all the money's gone, and they don't know how they're going to feed their kids. They come home drunk and beat their family, blah. Well, the thing is that no one asked the immigrants. And for the immigrants, it wasn't just a bar. It was where they got their mail, where they learned to read English, where they could learn to read. And so it was really actually culturally inclusive for them to go to the bar with their native speakers and learn the American culture. And they didn't ask each other. And what's exciting about this project is we're asking everybody. We're asking the kids, we're asking and it's not administrators asking kids, it's a third party neutral. We're asking the kids, the teachers, we're asking the cops. Let's ask everybody and see what we find out, because we can't assume we know. We don't. No one asked. It's very exciting to see where we're going to end up. I don't know. Anyway, that was my 2 cents worth. If there's any more, then we can talk about midterm recruitment week, which is a new thing this year. Paolo? Sabdy? Somebody?
Oh, is that me? Oh, okay. I can help support if you want. Just toss it my way. Go for
You
it.
are supporting. You're footing the bill.
Yes, I am.
So quickly about midterm recruitment. So we are meeting up again. This one's going to be in person. We are doing a little midterm recruitment / meet and greet this upcoming Thursday, March 10th at 6. We are meeting back at BG Food Cartel in the same wooden picnic table area.
The pub.
There you go. That we did for Retreat Part 1. And it's just an opportunity to come hang out. It is being pushed via social media for people who are interested in maybe joining ATRAC to come and meet with us and ask us questions that we can answer. And Paolo is buying the food. So if you guys can make it, I know Joy will be there. I'm fingers crossed I'll be there as well. And we would love to have you guys join us.
Who thinks they can come? outside, good food. Hey, Spencer. You could wear your HRAC, there are HRAC t-shirts. You could pick up your HRAC t-shirt if you were
Yes.
coming.
If you're
Oh, are you
coming
bringing them?
and you
Are
want
you
your
bringing
shirt, please send me your size so that I could just have it ready at the cartel. But yes, I would love to buy you all food. I'm not sure what I'm going to get yet, but this has come up before, so I have to say it. I cannot buy you alcohol. You can buy it yourself, but I cannot buy it for you. I cannot use a city card for that. It will not. So, but please, I would love to have a bite with you. Also, if you know folks who might be interested, I know Spencer brought along Karen. Spencer, thank you for doing that. Karen, thank you for being here. If you know folks who might be interested, send them to this so that we can meet them. They can meet us. They could ask questions, and hopefully I don't scare anyone away and they apply to HRAC.
I did ask Karen if I did talk about HRAC to Karen, and I've talked about it to a number of people. And I know one woman who is very interested in applying for a commission. My concern is that I don't know who are we supposed to go get. I don't know if there were no applicants, which is why we don't have a full commission, or if the people that did apply didn't measure up in some way. So is there any, I don't know, can you point me somewhere?
Is there criteria they're looking for that we can identify and recruit that kind of person?
Sure. So I shared it through with our neighborhood program that some folks that we don't have are some parents with children in the Beaverton School District, which I confirmed that just a minute ago that is true. I asked also just, more folks of color, folks in the 20 to 30 age range. Really what I'm just trying to do is diversify as much as possible this group here. But I also would like to lean on y'all. I trust y'all to also, if you think that there's somebody who would make a good fit in this space, please go ahead and bring them in. With the exception of this recent year, I mean, I interviewed with all of you and put stars next to your names and you're here, right? So I would love for you to also please help recruit. Is that okay, Spencer? Does that help answer?
That's great, thank you.
Of course.
Do we know how long meetings will remain online? Because I know of someone, but he probably wouldn't be able to make like in-person meetings since he bikes everywhere and he lives on the east side. So do we know like how long we're going to stay online?
I'm not sure how to answer that right now, just because like I said earlier, I've mentioned it a few times when we're going to be meeting in person and then it changes. So I don't want to lie to y'all anymore.
Okay, no problem.
Well, it is spent, Amy, that's a great point. It is a bonus that folks who wouldn't otherwise be able to meet in person because of work commitments which put them late, or who are using public transportation, like I know that both Kathy and I do. So especially in bad weather, meeting remotely is good. Now, on the other hand, remotely implies internet and personal computers, both of which are an expense. So it is a balancing act. Do you guys have a feeling? Do you have an opinion about meeting in person versus remotely? This is not on the agenda. I'm making this up.
Well, thinking about human rights and inclusiveness, I think we should go hybrid.
I'm seeing all nods here.
So.
Yeah, I would like to meet in person, but I wouldn't like to leave anybody out who can't make it in person.
There's been a lot of success with AA meetings doing hybrid.
Yes, indeed.
I'm in organizations that's been doing hybrid for this last year too. So I still attend my meeting in Washington State. It's weird because it's a cell phone camera, but I'm there.
Interesting angles.
Sorry to interrupt. May I ask where we were meeting? Is it a public space that we're meeting prior? Was it a city council area? Where were we meeting before? And does it have the ability to have a projector with teams of a Zoom on it or anything like that?
Yes, so I could take that one. We used to meet at City Hall. I've been trying actually to get you council chambers. I don't think I'm going to be successful in that fight because we have other boards meeting that day on Wednesdays. But yeah, we've been meeting at City Hall, and we just get one of the larger rooms. Like on the 5th floor is the Columbia room. There's the 3rd floor kind of training room. So if y'all are familiar with the Beaverton building, we're just in those really big rooms. We always have projectors. We always have, some rooms have like the fancy monitor, like TV monitor in there, and the little fish eye thing, the big brother thing that like goes around and watches you. Kind of creepy, but we have those tools if we'd like to use them.
Yeah, I want to go in person personally, but yeah, I like the mixed idea so everyone can be included. And since people signed up like thinking it was going to be over Zoom, like I think the rest of the year at least should be offered hybrid so that people who like signed up doing Zoom can all attend throughout the rest of their commitment. Or actually, I guess it'd be longer than 1 year because it's their commitment.
Plus, I think Joy mentioned this before. I have a reputation for buying lots of food for our meetings, so we have a budget. I spend it on food. Hope you
He
all agree
does.
with that.
And it's really great food. There's always lots of it. And I have tried so many little places that I would never have gone into or even know they were there. It's awesome. It's all local, usually folks of color, a lot of women. It's awesome. Tanya.
Are we gonna hear from Ashley? Because we're really running late now. Sorry.
We still have 11 minutes.
Oh, not by my thing. Okay.
8:30. Ashley, did we
Hello.
miss you? Yes.
Yes.
Apologies.
That's okay. Don't worry about it. I just want to make sure y'all have insight into our goals and priorities. So what I'm going to do is I'm linking to our agenda from February 22nd, which is when we talked about it. In this, you can see like the detailed work plan as well as the agenda bill and the PowerPoint. I think I can share screen. Is that okay, Paolo, if I just pull up? Okay. All right. So I'm just going to share. You can ignore the colors. The colors don't actually mean anything. I think they were just meant to break things up, but they're not a categorization at all. But essentially we came up with like our our goal statement and then our priority areas for the essentially the next 2 years. So our statement is that the city of Beaverton is committed to meeting its goals by embracing its community vision, advancing diversity, equity, and inclusion, proactively responding to climate change, and striving for fiscal sustainability. And the way we will do those things is through the list of 8. And so the kind of charge that we have given to our city is that when you're coming forward with budget requests and with project work, that we need to see these things reflected in your projects over the next 1 to 2 years. For existing projects, we definitely asked, let's see, like, do they line up against these priorities that we've set? So then these 8 kind of priority areas, which actually let's see, it's not on this document, but it is in the other part of the agenda packet. Each of these areas, like a welcoming community, it has kind of like a statement about what it is and some examples of what that means to us. And so we tried to make it really clear to our community, like, what matters to your elected officials at City Council. These are our strategic goals that we hope are really reflective of our community. That's also why we said community vision is so important to us, that we really want to be driven by the needs of our community. And to me, that is all residents of Beaverton. That is sheltered or unsheltered residents of Beaverton. That is renters, that is homeowners, right? To me, this is truly every single person in Beaverton is who I am representing, whether they can vote for me or not, right? Like, the young people are just as important. Our immigrant community is just as important. That statement is speaking from my voice as an individual city councilor, but that's a perspective that I bring when I tried to influence these goals. So you can kind of see in here, our city manager made this analogy for us of the iceberg, that what we have in the work plan is a top, I think there's almost like 40 list. And then there's many, many other lists and projects that are going on over the next 2 years. They just don't bubble up to as like high visibility. So the ones that council would see more regularly would fit in this list. Again, the colors don't line up. These colors don't match the colors on the, this is not it's not a key. So I have asked the city manager if we could work a little bit on how we present it to make it a little easier to really understand. And so that when people look at our list of projects, they know exactly which priorities it lines up to. The only one that came off this list during our work session is number 7, Charter Review Ordinance. So during our retreat in December, a little bit of talk happened around, do we want to set up a charter review process? And that would be like, certain cities have like in their charters that every 5 or 10 or whatever increment of time there would be a charter review process, and it's very heavily community engaged. When we were talking about if we wanted to establish something like that, it's not that we don't see importance in that, we just have a lot more pressing things that we want our city to be focused on right now, and we're only 1 year into this new form of government, and we want to give it a little bit of time to for us to kind of get to maybe not quite maturity, but maybe adolescence in the transition before we start looking at really changing things up. So we took off number 7, and then we also kind of added a theme, but kind of a focus area of mental health specifically. So you can see on here, number 5 is the behavioral health court expansion. And that is the only project on here that we kind of saw as having like a focus that was somewhat tied to mental health. And so we wanted to make sure that our community's mental health is a priority to us. And so we asked that where we can, we work in that lens of how do we take care of our community's mental health. So I want to make sure you have time for questions. I know I didn't go into too many details, but if there's any on here you would like to ask a question about, or ask, if I can give a little bit more commentary on, I'm happy to do that. Okay.
Kathy.
Yeah, I just want to tell you, Ashley, how much I appreciate the council's discussion of mental health priorities and the agreement to consider it and add it as possible to initiatives. And I just thank you. It seems really important in this time, especially. And I was admiring once again of the council's process and their responsiveness. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kathy.
I have a question. Number 2 is anti-racism, which is different than not racist. Anti-racism as a roadmap. I have some thoughts about that I plan to bring up at our retreat. I can preview them here, but I would love to have that conversation. I think we could get behind that. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I have a question, Ashley. Like, which of these priorities do you think that HRAC could be most helpful in providing insight? Like, where could we support your work? And that can be a question that you can think about and like talk about next meeting, maybe. But I think that it might be helpful for us to like have your insight into like where we might be helpful. And I also just want to highlight that like from a human rights perspective, it seems like you guys are really on board with the human rights agenda in how we're thinking about mapping out the priorities of our city with this new form of government. So I'm really excited to see what you guys are doing. And I feel like you guys in a lot of ways make our job really easy. Obviously there's always more battles to be fought, but I just really appreciate the thoughtfulness that was put into this plan and roadmap, and I'm sure a lot of hard work. So really appreciate you all.
Thank you. I can't take credit. Like, so much of this work is city staff, you know, and the amazing people that work for our city that are helping drive this and bring these priority projects forward too. And especially as the newest member, like, I don't get to take too much credit yet, you know. I will say though, it is really nice to see that like my voice was heard and things that I brought up in that conversation are visible there. I do think there's a couple that kind of feel really natural to get HREC input. I think behavioral health court could be an interesting one. I definitely think our anti-racism roadmap, community vision, comprehensive review of police policies and procedures, our coordinated homeless response and permanent shelter. I would really be interested. That's definitely one of my highest priorities to accomplish. Enhance police transparency, access, communication. I mean, really, like, there's a lot that touch this group because, like we've spoken about, like, human rights are really in everything. So those are kind of the traffic transportation system plan is another one. So there's kind of a lot here. And you know, I guess the other thing would be like, if there's things in here, I'll try to, if y'all identify the list that you are the most interested in too, that I can try to make sure I come with updates on those, especially when I hear them at council.
So Joy, could we make that a discussion for the next meeting, like to think about that a little more? Is that possible?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Molly.
I just wanted to add a 2 cents about the behavioral health court. So it's just recently was implemented with the Beaverton Municipal Court, which I used to work at. But if we were interested right now, they're currently on their kind of circuit of doing presentations. They just held one for a CLE, for continuing learning credits for police officers, and criminal justice, legal professionals, paraprofessionals. So I think that if we were interested in having some of the folks who are on the behavioral health court present for us, I'm sure they would be amenable to it. It's the presiding judge for it is Juliet Britton, and the sergeant with the police department is Ed Master Polito. And then the coordinator there is Kevin Boone. And I'm sure that they would be happy to see if they could accommodate a presentation to us about their policies and their procedures, what they're doing, how they do their outreach and referral process.
That's awesome.
Wonderful. Okay. Got it done just in time. So yeah, and please feel free again, you know, my email is available to y'all. If you have any other questions or want me to speak about anything else, I'm happy to, or find out more information. I have an email drafted about the tiebreaker question to our city manager about the SROs. So we'll find out more.
Excellent. Perfect. Well, everyone, it has been a great meeting. I don't know what you think, but where we covered a lot of ground. I'm looking forward to seeing you next Thursday night at the midterm recruitment meet and greet, or at the retreat part 2, which is before our next meeting. So you have both of those on your calendars. All right, well, meeting adjourned.
Bye.